The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk, the borough's flagship talk show. Has been in existence for more than 17 years, one of the city's longest running TV talk shows. Our phones are open tonight. You can join the conversation with questions or comments by calling in at 718-960-7241. You can also email comments to us at bronxtalk@hotmail.com, and we'll read those on the air during a future edition of our program. Tonight's guest is the chair of the City Council's Transportation Committee, so we'll talk about a lot of related issues tonight, including MTA budgets and fare hikes, bike paths in the Bronx, the Pelham Parkway trees controversy, and much more. There are also a lot of other issues on the table tonight involving the New York City Council and all of the implications thereof. So let's get it going with the council member from the 13th Council District, which includes, let's list the Bronx neighborhoods: Pelham Parkway, Pelham Bay, Country Club, City Island, Throgs Neck, Allerton, and Morris Park. Welcome back. It's always a pleasure to have Councilman Jimmy Vacca. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me again.
Let's start with that Pelham Parkway tree controversy. The courts have backed the alliance and preservationists so that it appears dozens of trees will be saved. I presume you're happy with this development.
I think that the Pelham Parkway Preservation Association deserves so much of the credit. They brought a lawsuit, and they felt that the city was not totally clear and transparent as to how this sewer project was going to be conducted. And based on their lawsuit and an injunction that a judge issued, they then brought the city to the table. I was there just to expedite those meetings. But basically, the Pelham Parkway Alliance decided that based on the written assurances they now have from the city, which are very, very detailed, and were overseen by their attorney, Mr. Madonia from the Bronx, they are confident that this will be a decision that will help Pelham Parkway save many of the trees that were set to go. There's no doubt some trees will go. There are some dead trees. There are other trees where in the future we will have to determine how many of them we can save. But the issue also is that the Pelham Parkway Preservation Alliance and those interested in the tree preservation issues will be at the table in a meaningful way. We've received many assurances in writing that I think will help us as this project proceeds.
From a transportation perspective, are you pleased that you're still going to be able to put together a plan that will do the things from an infrastructure point of view that Pelham Parkway needs?
I think from an infrastructure point of view, it cannot be disputed that Pelham Parkway has had serious issues for many, many years. Flooding, low parts of Pelham Parkway are dangerous during heavy rain and snow. The road often swerves. This project has been on the drawing boards for 20 years, way before I became a councilman, and Community Board 11 deserves much of that credit over the years for plodding through and making sure that money stayed in the budget and that the city moved on it.
I remember when we did a debate when you were running for the office that you now hold, one of the questions was, what's the plan for Pelham Parkway? You mentioned the Community Board. I thought it was curious because we did a show, I think, as you know, here about the trees, that the Community Board backed the city and went up against the Preservation Alliance. Seemed to me the Community Board's role would be to listen to the community and groups like the Preservation Alliance rather than kind of just blindly oppose them and insist that there was no other alternative. Did the Community Board lose its way?
No, I think the Community Board came together with the Preservation Association. I think they were going in the same place, but maybe on a different road, no pun intended. I think both of them wanted to save as many trees as possible, and both of them wanted to see Pelham Parkway reconstructed as needed to assure safety of pedestrians and motorists. And I think that they both came together. I just think that maybe they had different ways of getting there. And as I said before, the city never was totally forthcoming in a very formal way with what this job entailed.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to pursue it, but I mean, which is why I thought the community board should have been, the go-between, but that didn't happen.
I can tell you, too, that I think all of us, when we saw how many trees were involved, the city told the community board that information at a very late date. Initially, the removal of so many trees was not anticipated.
I'm an active and interested bicyclist in the Bronx, and we're talking about Pelham Parkway. There's a wonderful path that I use as often as I can, probably not in this weather, but I will use it as the weather gets warmer. You held a hearing on bike paths in the Bronx and other boroughs, more specifically the paths being created on our streets and roadways. Don't we want fewer cars and more bicyclists and more opportunities for bicycles in the city and in the Bronx?
I think bicycling is great. I believe it's a great exercise vehicle. I also believe it is pollution-free. So yes, we want more people to bicycle. But in some cases, we have bicycle paths that are not used. In other cases, we have bicycle paths that are taking away from vehicular traffic and from parking, making for more congestion on many of our streets. So it's a balancing act. And that was my committee meeting last week. We had over 300 people giving testimony, present, and about 75 people giving testimony because some of the bicycle paths have caused problems where they've been constructed. In one part of Brooklyn, when you open up your passenger door, you're right in the lane of the bicycle path. And people are saying, I'm afraid to open my door. I don't want to hit a bicyclist.
And I can tell you from the biker's perspective, that's a very dangerous thing. I mean, there are some terrible stories about, they call it getting doored. And if it's that close, that's probably not good planning.
And that's exactly what happened. And I asked the Transportation Commissioner, which the Daily News reported on Saturday, I asked her how many people bicycle in New York City. And I didn't get an answer because she said she'd have to get back to me. Well, I want to know how many people bicycle in New York City. I want to know how many people who bicycle are no longer using their cars, because that is one of the objectives if we encourage bicycling. We want to get people out of their cars. So I think that there's some questions that still remain to be answered, but I do think, especially in our parks, for example, bicycling should be encouraged. And on city streets, we have to look at what it does to the movement of traffic and to the availability of parking that we so desperately need.
This moves us really headlong into another dialogue that's not directly Bronx related, but from a process point of view is Bronx related. On 9th Avenue, there are bike lanes that go down, and they've been literally carved out of the street with new sidewalks created so that a bike lane. I was down there. I don't know as a bicyclist if that's a good one. There's another one on 8th Avenue, which brings us to the whole idea of process. Are these lanes being prepared? Is the closing of 34th Street between 6th and 7th Avenue, is that process going well enough and proper enough so that there's input from enough people so that the ultimate plan is the right one?
Well, we enacted legislation in the New York City Council in 2009, and that legislation requires better community board input and consultation. That was not taking place before. So I do think that will be occurring. But that being said, there are many issues with the bike lanes, as you pointed out. More congestion means even worse traffic in Manhattan. And Manhattan, Columbus Circle, 50 parking spaces were eliminated in the Columbus Circle area. The plans that we've had so far have shifted traffic. So when you shift traffic, what are the traffic counts on the blocks where traffic is shifted to? That's very important to know.
Is the DOT getting that information and presenting that information so all of the stakeholders, including yourself and the city council and community boards and bikers and pedestrians can make a judgment?
Well, they are getting the information, but we need more. I think some of the information I requested the other day I did not have, and I'm looking forward to having it. I want to know when traffic is displaced, where is it going? And where it goes, is that creating another backup on another block?
When the city came up with information to document how well the pedestrian mall in Times Square did, there were many people who said, you know what, the information was fudged. Who knows really? Can we believe the information? I guess it's a twofold question. is the information you're going to get from the city, are you going to believe it? And then number two, will you back the mayor's plan to shut 34th Street in front of Macy's from 6th to 7th?
Well, 34th Street is a year or two away. And I have to tell you, one of the things I will assess when it comes to 34th Street is what will be the impact on small business. What will be the impact on stores where loading and unloading is no longer accessible in front of storekeepers' shops? That's what's being spoken about right now. I don't want to hurt small business. They're suffering enough. We have the Department of Transportation, again, wants to raise parking meter rates. And I'm fighting that because on one hand, we say we need small business, and then we keep taxing them and making it harder for them to exist. And increasing parking meter rates, again, the second time in the past 18 months, will just hurt little people who drive cars, who now have to pay more at the meter, and little businesses who sometimes may see their customers go to Westchester County, where they have a mall and they can park all day and go shopping. I don't want to see that. So I'm fighting that increase that the Department of Transportation is proposing as well.
It's a very interesting point, just back to the 34th Street thing that people might not think about. You have all those stores across the street from Macy's. That's how they get deliveries. One would wonder how else that might be done. Right. Let's talk about the parking meter rates. You know the city is having problems with money. You know they need to get something back. Why not say, you know what, instead of 75 cents, it's now $1 an hour? Really, can't most people afford that? And isn't that a way for the city to raise just a little bit more money to help serve the people with the things that we all want, whether it be in schools and police and fire and all the important things?
Well, I think those of us who have cars and those of us who use mass transit have been hit enough. These taxes and these fees and these increases in fares and tolls and in motor vehicle registration, all of this is adding up to the fact that whether you use mass transit or drive a car, you're being taxed out of existence. You're just being taxed out of existence. This is yet another fee increase. It's a hidden tax. And this fee increase and the last fee increase and the toll increases and the fare increases all add up. And the price of gasoline being $3.30. You know, we in the Bronx don't have mass transit options like other people in Manhattan have. We have many
certainly in your district, in the eastern part of the borough.
In the eastern part of the borough. In Manhattan, you can catch a bus or a train almost anywhere you go. That's not the case in the Bronx.
So how do you balance the budget? These aren't places where you can get some money back and balance the budget? I
think that when you add everything together, transportation has been taxed extensively. I'm not for any more taxes. I think we've been taxed enough. I have to tell you, we're going to have to live within our means. People in the Bronx who have a household budget know that these past two years have not been good. Unfortunately, people have had to live within their means. We have a city and a state now that has to make smart and wise cuts. We cannot be raising taxes and chasing business and chasing taxpayers out of our city and state anymore. We have to make sure the cuts don't go below the bone to the marrow. And that's why I'm out there fighting, of course, the firehouse closures, the cuts to seniors who are very, very vulnerable. Many of these cuts are wrong and they're dangerous. But does New York City and New York State have to look at how they're spending their money? Yes, because the taxpayers' pockets are empty. There's nothing else to dig for, and that's the reality.
We're going to do one more traffic question, then we'll go to the telephone. You had a bill passed in the City Council over approval for traffic calming devices,
yes,
which are speed bumps and those kinds of things. Why was this necessary? We'll give you the floor. Just tell us, what was this all about?
Well, I want neighborhoods to be empowered. I want them to be empowered when they fight for traffic improvements. I can't go anywhere in the borough without people talking to me and saying to me, Mr. Vaca, traffic is going
Jimmy sometimes.
Or Jimmy sometimes. Traffic is going too fast on my block. How do we slow down these cars? We have a lot of seniors on our block, a lot of kids on our block. So I want neighborhoods to be empowered to fight for traffic calming measures. How do you fight for them? Well, I want to know what the guidelines of the Department of Transportation are, and I want people to be able to access those guidelines on the internet. And that was my law that passed, and the mayor signed it. And within 90 days, DOT is going to have to post on the internet what determines whether or not they're going to put a speed bump or a stop sign or anything else that calms traffic.
To translate it into the reality, so a community says, we need a speed bump here. They can measure whether that need fits the city's guidelines, and then the city can't say, well, we decided in your neighborhood you don't get it.
Absolutely.
Am I following through?
Absolutely. Okay. Or if there's a 12-block area and the city said no to a speed bump here because the guideline didn't fit, maybe it will fit on another block nearby. Many times traffic is not just a 1-block issue, it's a 5, 6, or 7-block issue. Right. I want these neighborhoods in my borough and throughout the city to get something if they see that there's a need.
And it's also a way of getting community input so they feel empowered that they can have some control over what goes on.
Absolutely.
All right, let's your friend and mine too, Mark from Pelham Parkway, who joins us often. How are you, Mark?
Hey, Gary and Councilman James Vacas.
How are you? How are you?
I just want to make a statement, then I have a question for you. And Gary knows this is true to my heart. First of all, I think you're doing a hell of a job, as much as you can do within your power.
Thank you.
But I think what's going on is they want to get rid of the middle class in New York, and the Bronx is the forgotten borough. We have the highest amount of unemployment in the Bronx. And the thing that I'm looking at is public transportation would be great if it worked. The other thing is, have you started looking at the transit authority's books? Because we know at one time they had 2 sets of books. They probably have 3 or 4 sets by now. And I'm just thinking of that the city seems to this mayor gets whatever he wants. He threw that housing for the homeless up in Westchester Square.
So let's boil it down. The question is, has Mr. Vaca had a chance to look at the books, or is he going to be urging the MTA to really open the books?
Yeah, has he looked at, and we're just being, literally, you're right, Jimmy, we're being taxed out of existence here. Because if you look in the area around Morris Park, I counted one day 14 houses up for sale. And I know somebody who's selling his house so he can move up to the Poconos, where he won't pay ridiculous water tax.
Mark, I want to give the councilman a chance to answer.
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
I very much appreciate Mark's remarks, and I'm concerned too. I'm concerned that we're not doing enough to keep the middle class in the city, and we're not doing enough to serve the working class and the poor. I look at our school system. I'm not happy with what I see. 77% of the students in the city of New York who graduate high school and go to college, among those who go to college, 77% need remedial math and remedial reading. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. Almost 80% of the students in Bronx High School of Science do not come from the Bronx.
So the graduation rate is interesting, but it may not be the bottom line, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. The graduation rate is only one part of that whole dynamic, and we want students to get rid of their remedial courses while they're in intermediate and high schools and go to college prepared to have college-level work, and that's not happening.
I want to ask you an MTA question, then we'll go back to the telephone. Chavon Construction, a contractor who has gotten a huge amount of works with the city on the filtration plant, as well as with the MTA, was recently fined over minority and women-owned business hirings. Basically, they were accused and found to be fraudulent. Should the MTA and the city still be doing business with this company? This is a company that is making not millions, but billions of dollars, and this is not just a little budgetary issue. This is blatant fraud that the federal attorneys have found to be true. Why is the city still doing business, and should the MTA, for example, say, you know what, we won't do business with this company?
Why the city is doing business, I don't know. Should the MTA continue to do business with a company that's had those allegations?
Not allegations, they've been fined.
Fined, I would say no.
You vote no. All right. Let's go to the telephone. Bob from the Bronx News. He's from Riverdale. He's been from a couple of different places, but it's the same friend, Bob. How are you?
Good evening, Gary. Good evening, Councilman Vaca.
Hi.
I just want to say that the mayor is King Mayor, and it's outrageous what he's doing with the parking meters, raising the rates 100% within 1 year. It used to be a half hour for a quarter, and it will be $1 for a quarter.
Right.
15 minutes for a quarter.
So go ahead. Do you have a question, or you wanted to just make that statement?
No. I also want to know, how are meters placed? I have seen areas of the city where there are stores or businesses with no meters in front of them. And I've seen areas where there are meters 2 blocks past from where the stores are, or across the street down the block from where stores are. How are meters put into the, how are they set?
Thank you very much. So maybe something that could use review, as if you're not busy enough, but it's an interesting question.
I was mentioning I've had 3 hearings in the last 3 weeks, but I certainly will review this. My understanding is, and certainly if I was a merchant, I would want a parking meter in front of my store if I was a storekeeper, because you need turnover. You need turnover so that one person shops, the next person comes in and shops also. So you need turnover. I do not believe that we should have parking meters in front of people's homes or in front of residential property. This is my belief. So many of our commercial areas do need parking, and the issue of how meters get there is determined by the Department of Transportation. But I'm certainly willing to look into situations that may be pointed out that are unacceptable, and certain areas to me define that.
Well, now it's on the record, so you have something else to work on. Yeah. Which brings up, and I really wanted to get off the transportation, although you're so involved in it, and there's so much going on. In some neighborhoods in the Bronx, they have minimize the amount of alternate side of the street parking. Some neighborhoods have one day, I know in my neighborhood, frankly, they do. I don't know about in your neighborhood. Is this something we can get the city to do more of? Because certainly for motorists and for the general welfare, this is a very helpful kind of thing for people's day-to-day operations.
We have legislation like that pending before my committee now. We're working on a package of bills that speak to the alternate side parking issues. I'm in favor of reducing the alternate side where blocks have it 4 days a week to 2, if that does not result in a lack of cleanliness. If that results in streets getting dirtier, I would be concerned. But if we can look at the cleanliness ratings of those blocks, and if they've been consistent, I think that parking is very much needed, and we're looking at trying to do something that would tie the reduction in alternate side parking regulations to street cleanliness issues.
I want to go back to the schools, and you brought up a very interesting point about the idea of graduation rates and remediation and how good the schools are. I was curious, you did not join the chorus of those who thought that Kathy Black should be prohibited from serving as chancellor, yet you're telling us here you're not really satisfied with how the schools are going. Why was that?
Well, I'm hoping she can turn things around, and I'm willing to give her an opportunity. I'm not happy with much of what I see. The Bronx has more failing schools than any other borough by far. The list was issued again last week. This is just the latest list. They keep issuing list after list, more schools after more schools, closing schools. What they do is that they rearrange the chairs on the Titanic. Why is this borough worse than any other borough? We've not received the help that we should have received. We have to help these schools rather than constantly closing them, because that's not been the answer to the problem.
So does Kathy Black, who is in more of the mold in a way that Chancellor Klein was in, is she going to be able to offer the kind of change that you're really calling for right now, or is she really going to do more of the same and throw the school system further in a direction that'll take it away from the things that you want?
I say time will tell. She will be surrounded by educators. Every chancellor is. Who do you think works in the Department of Education? They're all educators. I go back to 110 Livingston Street. They were all educators.
But the system went wrong with the same surrounding of educators under Joel Klein, at least according to what you said.
My feeling is that Joel Klein implemented many measures affecting certainly our borough that are not answers. In fact, they raise more questions than they give answers. I'm hoping that Kathy Black takes a look at this system and does something. The mayor has the power to appoint whoever he wishes. I'm willing to give whoever he appoints, in this case Kathy Black, an opportunity, but boy does she have a job to do. I'm not happy with what I see, and I've made my voice very, very clear on these issues. You have schools failing that never failed before, and you have schools that the Department of Education created that are failing as well. When people say to me, who's responsible for the failure, the Department of Education has to look themselves in the mirror. They are responsible.
If you get an audience, even one-on-one, as if like this, in a private little room with everybody in the Bronx watching, with the chancellor, aside from saying what you want the results to be, what are you going to recommend that she does?
Well, there are a couple of things I think I would recommend. I would recommend that she take a fresh look at the schools that are closing in our borough. And I would recommend that she look at leadership, that she look at curriculum. I would recommend that she look at management and try to keep those schools open. I graduated Columbus High School. It breaks my heart that my alma mater is again on the closure list. It does not have to be on the closure list.
Do teachers have to be on the opposition list, which is certainly what appears to be out in the media, and apparently the first salvo was already thrown by the new chancellor?
We need the teachers, and we need the principals. If they're not doing a good job, then we need them to do better. But the reality is we have to work together, and we can't be always adversarial. I know in the case of Columbus that there is an answer. That school can be kept open. I can go down the list to other schools that are being closed. Columbus has been in trouble for many, many years. There have been issues at Columbus. We in Pelham Parkway and Morris Park, we know that.
How do we fix them?
Where have they been? They have to be in the buildings proactively. They have to take the bull by the horns, and they've got to find out what's not being done. Instead of just throwing their hands up in the air and telling these kids that you will be dispersed to other schools where you will no longer be known, you will just become a number and you'll be lost in the system. That's unacceptable.
We're only have a minute or so, but you have a bill in the city council that will fight rogue landlords, that would require them to fix their properties before being allowed to move them. This is a dialogue that's been going on for years. Certainly on this program, we've talked about it since the beginning of time. Why, and what's the status report on its progress?
I think my bill has hope. It's moving. I think there's a lot of consensus for it. I believe that if you own property in the city of New York and you have fines up to here, why are you getting permits to build even more? You have to clean up your act, pay your water bills that you owe, pay your real estate taxes, pay the city what you owe before you get another permit to build more and compound the problem.
It sounds totally logical. What's the holdup? Why doesn't it just fly through?
It's very hard to do this, people say, because people hide behind corporations and they are partners and they have less than 10% ownership. So are they going to be penalized with a person who has 60% ownership? And how do you trace different corporations even though the individuals are the same? We're finding a way to cut through this maze of why can't we, to tell them why we should do this right away.
Your colleagues, many of your colleagues are behind you?
Oh, yes.
I'm assuming the Bronx delegation is squarely behind.
Yes.
Councilman, you'll come back one day, right?
Any one time. I love this. I enjoy having...
Councilmember Jimmy Vaca, there's the phone number for his office. Folks, and if you have further comments or questions on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, then email them to us at BronxTalk@hotmail.com, and we'll read those on the air during a future edition of our program. Archives of the show, including this show, is available at BronxNet.org. You click Bronx Talk on the right-hand navigation bar. Next Monday night, a holiday show. We won't talk politics. Featuring some incredible music by an incredible Bronx musician. Jan Close playing live in our studio next Monday night. Should be a lot of fun. Bronx Talk now in its 17th year, one of the longest running weekly TV talk shows in New York City on BronxNet, Cablevision Channel 67, Verizon Fios 33. Special thanks, of course, to Jane Folloro, our able producer, and Michael Arias, our director, the cast of Thousands Up in the booth, and to you, good night.
It's very vital that the community be involved with these types of productions.
It introduced me to the operations of camera, about field production.
It was like an extended version of going back to school for me.
I think BronxNet brought it out of me.
But BronxNet is a very good source for the regular citizen to just have that opportunity.
It's for the community, to be utilized by the community.
To present their side, their story through communications and through the television medium.
Voice your support to keep the channels open and strong. Online, visit BronxNet.org and click on Support Public Access Television and sign the letter to your local representatives.
Our voices will be heard. Let's keep this